All right, guys, thanks for coming out to the Industry Insights panel today. For those of you who were into the Leadership Forum with Teresa Foxley, we just have a couple announcements for next week. Next week's Leadership Forum will be sponsored by the Utah Bankers Association. Following that, at 12 p.m., we'll have the Network Etiquette Luncheon. We'll have our expert, Candace Smith, talking about the do's and don'ts of networking during a business lunch. They'll provide a 3-course meal, so it should be a great time. Look for that in your emails. So now we'll turn the time over to Chris Fossen and today's Industry Insights.
It's a great honor to be with you today and to be part of this extraordinary panel of experts on the stage with me. First to my right, we have Dr. Elizabeth Crook. It's a great honor to have Elizabeth and her husband Fred with us. I met them 40 years ago as a young LDS missionary in Taiwan. They were my mission president.
Oh, cool.
And it's where I learned to love the Chinese language and Chinese culture and gain an appreciation for the extraordinary opportunities that exist in Asia and in China in particular. Dr. Crook earned her PhD from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. In addition to her extraordinary personal service along with her husband throughout their life in China, she's also had a significant career with the U.S. State Department as an expert on China and Asian affairs, and knows everything there is to know about China that's happened over the past 50 years. So she's worked in China, she's lived in China, and has some great experience to share with us. Next to Dr. Crook is Blake Watterson. Blake, thanks for being here. Blake is the Vice President for Operations and Supply Chain at Icon. This is one of the great legacy companies in Cache Valley, great family heritage that has been a critical part of our community. Excited to have Blake here to represent Icon. They're also a company that does extensive business in China. I do have just a side note. Many years ago, I was traveling in a very obscure corner of Russia and happened to walk into a small exercise equipment sporting goods store and saw a Proform treadmill and thought, wow, Icon rules the world.
They're worldwide.
And felt deeply honored and proud to be in a community that had such an extraordinary company and has left such a great legacy for our community. Next to Blake is David Thornley, and David runs a company called Lifestyle Products. Mm-hmm. What David's company does is basically source product out of China and distribute it in the U.S. through all kinds of mechanisms, and very innovative, very creative. I like to think of him as an opportunistic arbitrager, for those of you that are in finance.
Good.
And
I like it.
I just like to put a sophisticated title on you, Dave.
Perfect.
I know Blake and Dave quite well. They live in my neighborhood, so they tolerate me hanging out with them on rare occasion. It's an honor to be with them. Next to Dave Thornley is Scott Haskinson, and also a great legacy name in the Valley. He has created several companies that have been wildly successful, including things like Reminder Band, which is, I think, your first successful startup. I'm not sure. You probably had a childhood history of doing innovative things. We'll maybe have a chance to learn about that. But those are the silicone wristbands. And then came up with some innovations in terms of phone cases. Started iFrogs. That was purchased by Zag in 2011. And now Scott basically dabbles with lots of fun things on the side and is involved in, is it Zips?
Yeah.
What I have on my note here is you like to sort of hang out with family and hang out in Bear Lake and do lots of other things. So excited to have you here with us on the panel as well. I think one of the things that might be most useful, we have 3 USU graduates Scott, David, and Blake, and then Elizabeth comes to us through a very roundabout way. And so maybe even starting off and telling us a little bit about your career path and things that were sort of trigger points for success, or where you saw opportunities to sort of make a decision that led you in one direction or another, how important those decisions are. Part of our audience is students, and they're looking for role models, sort of how you navigate through the complexities of life and how you ended up where you're at. So maybe if we'll just, as a start off, and have you maybe even, flesh out my poor introduction and talk a little bit about how you end up where you're at, and we'll kind of go from there. So.
Sure. Well, I think the most significant thing that happened to me while I was at college was I decided to join a group that from the 7 sister colleges, Wellesley, Radcliffe, Harvard, to go to a junior year abroad in Geneva, Switzerland. This was not something that people did back in 1960, 61. I think I was the first one. I was attending BYU, but I did find an opportunity to do a year overseas, and I went to the University of Geneva, and I took, my classes were all in French, and it was rail submersion, and it made me decide that I wanted a career in international relations. So I would say, I think the speaker before mentioned how important it is to do internships, to get out of your comfort zone, to go overseas, and I would certainly recommend doing that.
I've got one, thank you. Okay, so I think it's safe to say that I'm the most recent graduate on the panel.
Come on now, Blake.
And so not very long ago, I was probably sitting in this this wasn't built when I was here, so. And I was wondering, what do I want to do with my life? And so that's a great question. And I guess my first answer would be, you really never arrive. So today, 15 years later, I'm still moving and navigating through that very question. So don't think that you're going to arrive anywhere. The second thing that I learned from a very wise man that started a very successful company is that you need to utilize your assets. So we talk a lot about networking, and he had one a saying that I can't say here, but in other words, use your assets, and it will help you to navigate through this. And what your biggest asset is, frankly, is your relationships. And that's hard to say sometimes, but if you have good relationships, it will take you in places that otherwise you might not get there. So I haven't arrived anywhere, but I'm happy with where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Okay, do you want how long did we have today, Chris?
Given how much I know you, Dave, 2 seconds.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
When I went to school here, my dad was a dentist, and I decided maybe I'll be a dentist like my dad, but I'll take some business classes too. And I took a couple chemistry classes. I said, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing the dentistry thing. So I ended up graduating with a degree in finance here, and it was a great education. I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to have my own business. That was always something that I wanted. I just didn't quite know how to get there. So the evolution of how I got to where I'm at is, I went to work for other people and learned some of the tricks of the trade. For instance, I worked for Lifetime Products. My company's called Lifestyle Products, a little play on words there. But Lifetime Products is a big company in Clearfield. And I went to work for them, and I learned retail. I learned how to distribute products to retail. I was a sales manager there. Then I left there and was recruited by a really small, teeny little entrepreneurial company. And this company didn't do any of their own manufacturing, unlike Lifetime had done. So they were sourcing products in Taiwan at the time. And so gradually, the things that I learned on the sales side, then I gradually kind of worked into the sourcing side as well. And that kind of gave me the basis to where I became a partner in a business, and then we made some changes, and I left and took some of the business with me into where it's my own business now. So for me, it didn't happen right off. I was desirous to go into business immediately, but I didn't quite know what to do or how to do it, and I finally got my experience, and maybe when I was in my late 30s, I think, is when I first had my own business. So.
I think my mic will
Okay.
So I wish I had this romantic story of how I envisioned going to school. Blake, if you said it's about 15 years ago, we graduated pretty close together. I had 6 kids at the time. I graduated from Utah State in 2002, so I might be the most recent graduate up here. But a lot of my business experience has come from having a family, I started having kids when I was 21, and I kept worrying about how am I going to feed these kids, and I was always self-employed. I done a lot of different weird businesses. I had a window cleaning business. For a time I was telling Blake I used to deliver office products to Icon, then I sold office products to Icon. And so my experience coming to Utah State was really because I had this goal. I wanted to graduate. I also felt like I needed to get an education. I'm the youngest in my family, the only one that ever went to college or graduated from college, and so it was. So I was a non-traditional student. I came here sometimes instead of coming to class, I'd go eat at the Hub or whatever. I think that's the name of it. And because of that, I'm probably an awful advocate for Utah State because I was the worst student. I don't know what my GPA was. But we have this picture in our living room of me in my cap and gown with a pregnant wife. And Bailey, was there 5 kids or 6 kids? Do you remember? This is my daughter, Bailey. She came to help me finish my sentences because I'm very ADD, and that's the advice my family always gives me is finish your sentences, Dad. So if she stands up and finishes it for me, then I apologize. So in my head, I'm saying the words. They just sometimes don't come out my mouth. So I think I finished my sentence, but I didn't. So anyway,
Thanks. That's really, really helpful. The focus of our conversation today is broadly about doing business in China. All of you have business connections in China that have been a formative part of the work that you do. And of course, it's opportune in the moment because China is so much in the news now. I've just noticed the last couple of weeks, virtually every day there's a front page story in the Wall Street Journal on China, what's happening with President Xi and the Communist Party and the exercising of control. I'm just maybe wondering if you could give us some perspective about maybe your experience in doing business in China. How did that evolve? Has the kind of relationship that you started in China been sustained? Are there challenges now? Where do you see opportunities? Gives you a very broad sort of landscape to navigate through, but help us paint that landscape of what doing business in China is like, how you got started, maybe where you see it going, and maybe even, Dr. Crook, in your situation, give us some context for the political changes that are occurring in China.
Well, The one thing that I really think is important for people that want to do business in China to realize is how important personal relationships are in China. There's even a word for it, guanxi. And it's extremely important to develop relationships. Now, the question is, how do you develop good relations with your counterparts in China? And I would say it's very important to do a little homework and learn something about Chinese history and learn a little of the language if you can. That would, endear you to Chinese counterparts. A little bit of the culture, and let me give you 2 examples. How many of you have heard of a woman named Helen Snow? Anybody? Helen Snow. Has anyone heard of the name Edgar Snow? Okay, see? A little work needs to be done here. Okay, Edgar and Helen Snow were very early a reporter and a photographer. Helen was the photographer and Edgar was the reporter, and they went to Yan'an in the early days of the Communist Revolution, and they documented the Communist Revolution up in the hills in Yan'an after the Great March. And they are heroes to many Chinese officials. In fact, they own a place in the hearts of the Communist Party. I think they are known as heroes of the party. It's important to know that because where did Helen Snow come from? She was not just the U.S., Utah. She grew up in Cedar City, Utah. Yes, there you go. And the fact that she is viewed as a hero, and she took early pictures of Mao and Zhou Enlai, and she is a very important person. So if you want to be friendly and make a good impression on the Chinese businessmen and the Chinese officials you're dealing with, if you know something about Helen Snow, you're, a step ahead. The second example is that about history. How did our railroad get built? Chinese workers came over, and the Chinese are very aware of that. In fact, there is a move in China to create a monument at Promontory Point to honor those Chinese workers. You need to know that. You need to know how important it is for Chinese businessmen and officials to have that recognized, that contribution to our country. And so I would recommend, do a little homework and kind of be able to talk about some of these things.
Okay, so Icon's been in China. Probably one of the earliest companies that actually migrated from Taiwan to China was Icon. And so we've been there since, I kind of want to paint this perspective. When we first went there, the average labor was about 400 renminbi per month. Okay? So that's when we went there.
$100.
No, not even close.
$42.
About, and the exchange rate was 13 at the
I
time.
didn't know what the exchange rate was.
Okay, so
So it'd be less.
so the exchange rate was 13, and the renminbi average wage was about 400. So now it's 4,500. This is just average labor, and the exchange rate has changed to 6.5. I check it every day, 6.63. And so, and the reason why that's important is when you're procuring $500 million of product from Asia a day or a year, the exchange rate really matters. So and to kind of further what the Chinese, they do care about relationship. And we talked about integrity earlier today. And integrity, most of the time we think integrity is a one-way street. Oh, you can trust, I can trust you. I can trust you. In China, it is just as much important as that they can trust the customer. Okay, because it's always about, oh, I don't know if I trust them. Well, they need to be able to trust you. You need to be able to do what it is you've told them, and you need to be able to deliver. And kind of, they are very proud of their history. I know I've got a lot of Chinese friends here. 大家好，我都会说你们中国来的，对吧? Okay. And they have, so our history in the great United States of America is not very long. The history of China is 5,000 years. We are like that much. So they're very proud of their history, as they should be. And so it's very important to become well-versed and appreciate that amazing culture that they have. It's an outstanding culture. So it has changed. The first $1 trillion company in the world is not going to be here in the United States of America. It will be in China. And the consumer market is totally different. That's going to be JD.com. They're just a .com. They're like Amazon, but they're on steroids. I mean, it's unbelievable what they're doing there. Their fulfillment is outstanding. And they will be the first $1 trillion company in the world, and it's going to come in China.
Should I take that? I don't know. Thanks. I started going to China in 2005. I wish I'd gone earlier because the economic revolution was well underway there, you know, with all the infrastructure, the huge buildings. Every time I go over there, I'm amazed that new cities pop up. And I remember going to a place one time. It was called Wuxi. I don't know if I'm saying it right, W-U-X-I. And they said, this is one of the first places I went after I flew into Shanghai. And they said, yeah, this is a small town. I'm like, oh, okay, small town. How many people? And they said 3 million. I'm like, that's bigger than any city but New York in the U.S. Maybe L.A. might be, and that's their small town.
They call it a village.
Yeah. So they have like, I think it's 200 cities that are 3 million. My numbers might not be right, but roughly 200 cities that are 3 million people or more in them. It's amazing. And then the infrastructure and the bullet trains and the airplanes and the beautiful big buildings. And most importantly, I love the Chinese people. They're amazing. They are great people, and I love going over there. My business is pretty interesting because we get new factories that we deal with probably every month. It's kind of strange. Our product line, none of you know what it is, and it probably doesn't matter, but you can go to TJ Maxx and find a lot of it in the beauty area. But we deal with such a broad product line that we probably have at any one time maybe 25 factories that we purchase product from. And so it's my opportunity to go over there at times and check these factories out. And I've seen A to Z. You know, I've seen state-of-the-art, the most amazing factories, and then I've seen little shops that are about as big as this little thing right here, dirt floors making stuff, you know. So there's quite the gamut there, but China is just a neat place. And if you're going to, you know, do business with China or source products or whatever, then you need to go over there and you need to figure out what it's about. And there's, you know, I could go on and on. I don't speak Chinese, really. I can say maybe 50 words, and a couple of them I can say really good. So I say them, and then the Chinese start going, blah, 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 and I'm just, oh, no, sorry, I don't speak Chinese, you know. But I really enjoy the Chinese people, and I really love hanging out with them, going to dinner with them, the way their culture is, and getting to know them and joking and teasing with them. They're really a neat people. So anyway, there's my input.
I'll use this.
Sorry.
I don't speak Chinese either. I can say where's the closest McDonald's. That's about it.
Yeah.
Or KFC. It was really easy too. So my first trip to China, and it's hard for me to speak on my business without bringing my religion into it, because there's so much of it that that hinges on that. I went to Hong Kong to a trade show because I felt like I needed to go. So I go to my wife that has 6 kids, little kids, run around and say, I think I need to go to China or to Hong Kong, and because at the time I was running a little knife business. I was selling souvenirs into Yellowstone National Park and a lot of different national parks. Very small business, about $100,000 a year. And I wanted, instead of buying from a distributor here out of New Jersey, I wanted to buy direct. So I went to a trade show in Hong Kong, and I walked the show. I remember getting there and not knowing anything. I don't think it was in 2004, and I met a gal named Susan Chan who, she was selling little mini compasses, and she was basically a trading company, and she had all sorts of things in her booth, and I was buying this same compass. We were putting on a little wooden keychain and selling it into Yellowstone National Park, and I was buying them for 40, 50 cents a piece, and I could get them from her for 8 cents if I bought 10,000 of them. And I still have about 9,000 of those. Okay. So it was what I call the Sam's Club approach. It's like the pickles aren't a good deal if you don't eat them all. If you buy the big jar, you're better off going with the small jar, paying a little bit more. But I met Susan. I came back, and we're friends to this day. I mean, every product I've done in China has been through Susan and Jimmy Chan. They are dear friends of mine. We wouldn't have a business, and that's where I believe with what's been said is relationship is everything. I took my children over there after I sold our business. I wanted to have my children experience this, and because I would go 6 or 7 times a year, go sit at a big round table, eating food that wasn't McDonald's, and
It's really good.
It's acquired taste.
It's acquired taste, yeah. No, there is a lot of stuff I like, and there's been times where they'll bring me KFC and stuff like that. But sitting there with these people that I can understand a little bit of what they're saying. But by the time we sold the business, we were working with probably 12 different factories. We had a brand called Ear Pollution, and so we did a lot of earbuds into Walmart. And as it grew, we had to expand our factories. So we moved from the original factory, which was Mr. Jones' factory. I don't know many of the factory owners' real names. They're all these American names that, like one we called, and it was Susan and Jimmy that called him Mr. Football because his head was kind of the shape of a soccer ball. So we would, so I got to know these people in a real weird way where whenever I would leave, we would hug, it was important for all these factories to come together because they were all producing the iFrogs brand, but they were competitors in their own right. You'd go into a factory and one line, 2 lines might have iFrogs product, and the next line might have Skull Candy, the next line might have JVC. And that was one thing that was very interesting to me, is that a lot of these factories are making competing products in their own factory, and they're competitors. But it was very important for iFrogs that, because the Walmart didn't care. If we had a quality problem, they didn't care, oh, well, that's Jones' factory or that's this. It was iFrogs. It's our problem.
Right.
And so we encouraged them, and we would have dinners together and encourage them to share technology, to share processes and things that would allow us to have a consistent brand. But when I took my children over there, I tried to explain to him how wonderful these people were and how weird it was for me to have such a love for them, not even being able to speak their language. And the last night, we spent a week or 10 days there and traveled through China, and we're there for Christmas. And the last night in China, we had a big banquet. And as we left, we took pictures with them all. And as we went to get in the elevator, my children were all in tears. And I said to them, I said, you see how awesome these people are, even though we haven't spoke a single word to most of them. And to this day, that's what they want to do. Is, can we go back to China? Can we go back? The other thing is that I see too many business owners there, and Blake, you talked about integrity. Too many business owners have treated China like it's some vending machine, some magical machine that, oh, I want this price and I want it for this, and if you don't do it, then I'll take my business elsewhere. And I find that business there is no different than here. You've got to be fair. You have to look out for their interests. They're the first link of your supply chain. If you can't get the product made, it doesn't matter how good your sales team is or your distribution team, if you can't have a good quality product made. And in most cases, China's superior to that. And anyways, I'll stop, but great people.
Thanks. That's really helpful. I actually want to come back to you, Scott, with another question. I like to tell students that there is no business that isn't international business today. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs start with the mindset of saying, you know, I'm starting my business in Cache Valley, I'm supplying Yellowstone, this is a small Cache Valley business. But in reality, the world is much bigger than that. Yeah. Wonder if you could talk a little bit about, you know, sort of the mindset you had that allowed you to look at the world through a much more global lens. Well, at what point did you get where you said, well, this is not a Utah business, it's not a Cache Valley business, it is truly a global business, and maybe there is no such thing as a small Cache Valley business anymore?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with what you said there. I don't know if the word international business needs to be said. I think business is international. Everything you do is, unless you have an idea of, oh, I just want to supply lemonade to locals, you know, or like I have a little lemonade stand. Anything, especially with the internet and so I was exposed to. Well, I won't go there. So, what did you want me to answer real quick? you said a lot there, but
yeah.
Just.
I mean, basically, what was the sort of mindset that allowed you to see Reminder Band or iFrogs in that international context? I mean, you wake up one morning and all of a sudden you're thinking, it isn't just Cache Valley business, it isn't just a Utah business, this is a global business, and I need to be sophisticated about that.
Well, I think part of the reason you need a China, you need what even Susan and Jimmy refer to as the kitchen that would manufacture your product is the capacity is there. A lot of people, you know, I'd have people, well, why don't you do your production in the U.S.? Well, molding silicone, I don't know if there's a lot of silicone molding factories. We originally started etching our bands here over in Tremont when we started Reminder Band. And that was, we would bring the wristbands in, we would use a laser to put the debossing on it instead of making the molds. That's where Reminder Band started. But when we got to the point where we were producing 60, 70, 100,000 wristbands a day, because of the internet and because of the fad that it was, we took that process to China and said, let's just produce them right in the same factory here. Then we took FedEx with us and said, help us with the logistics, and we don't need them shipped to Logan anymore, let's just ship them directly to the customer. And made it where they'd all clear customs in one pallet. My next door neighbors would order wristbands and they'd come from China, but it would look like it came from Logan, Utah because of the shipping marks and things like that. But I believe the thing I started in 2004, and at the time, and probably even much before that, is you could tell the difference between a Chinese-made product and, you know, it was a lot of what companies like Dave's done and is taking a Chinese-produced product and Americanizing it, right? Just like, hey, I got to clean up
Some of them,
clean up the packaging, clean up
Sometimes.
the tooling. Sometimes. Now they're so sophisticated that I believe that one of the threats to America, and when I say threat, I don't see it as, oh, they're attacking, but there's not a need for an iFrogs. We were able to go, and in most cases, you don't go over there with a bunch of tooling designs and say, hey, will you make these earbuds? You go to the factory and they say, hey, we have this one, and they're vowing for your business. They're coming and saying, hey, we have these new designs. We would like you to sell them because you have the supply channel in the U.S. But with
1.3 billion people is ginormous. And so a lot of companies like us, where probably 70% of our sales are here, where are we looking? We're looking to China. The good news about China is they love brands. And so a brand, they're willing to pay, for example, you look at a Mercedes-Benz here, you can buy a Mercedes-Benz here for $100,000. They'll pay $400,000 for that over and over and over again. Because that brand is so important. They may not have 5 Mercedes-Benz, but they'll have one. And there's 1.4 billion of them out there. So obviously the market, when you look at what Chevy's doing and GMC, they're all going over to China because the consumption is going to happen in China. Whereas before it was strictly, I shouldn't say strictly manufacturing, but it is going to pivot completely. And has started.
China, predicting some of the things that happen in China are kind of like meteorology, okay? It's like, just when you think you have it figured out, man, they throw you a curveball. And I've just seen this over and over again with products, with how they do business or cities or what have you. And it's a really interesting dynamic where you have the communist government, which we call it communist. It might be more of an oligarchy. I'm not sure. And then you talk about the capitalistic society. It's amazing. They've got, I think this kind of started happening in about the 80s where they decided, what, we need to become more like the West and start getting, following our example of the U.S. and other places like that. So as far as what's going to happen in the next 10 years, I don't know. If I'm to look at my company right now, how's it going to look in 10 years? I mean, right now, sometimes I consider the Chinese as my competitor when I'm trying to bring product over here. And the advantage that I have right now is I understand sales and marketing, and we have a lot of our employees that really understand fashion and et cetera, and these Chinese factories typically need our direction in helping them to understand that. Now, culturally, there's a big chasm there. It's very different, our cultures. And so in the amount of time that I've dealt with them, I haven't really seen the Chinese gain the kind of education or whatever, marketing or what have you, to be able to go in there and take over my business and just say, hey, we don't need this guy. We can go directly to all these people and do business. So I think there will still be a need for companies to supply products here, and I don't disagree. I mean, China's going to be a huge consuming nation, which they already are, but it's tough to get in there. I don't know how long you guys have been working on it, Blake, but we've made little attempts at trying to, and the red tape and the things you have to jump through, the things you have to do are crazy. It's like, kind of difficult. So I'm not really sure what they're going to look like, but I know they're powerful, and I know they will continue to be powerful. And if, unfortunately, if their prices get too high, then maybe a company like mine might have to go to some other places to source it. And let me just give you one example of a product that I had that didn't work. Scott talked a little bit about stuff that doesn't work once in a while. My brother-in-law invented a what he called a rack jack, and it's a device for making deer horns bigger. So when you shoot a big deer, let's say it's only a 22-inch spread, well, you can put that rack jack in there and expand it out, and it's bigger. Okay, the horns don't get thicker, but it gets wider, you know, because wide's kind of a big deal. So we came out with this little product, and you know, we actually made a little traction, but it never sold very many. But anyway, I wanted to make this in the U.S. because we had a factory. Well, my designer was here, so I had an engineer design the whole thing, and we went through all the CAD drawings and everything, and spent a lot of time getting exactly how we wanted it. And we decided, okay, there's a lot of hungry U.S. factories out there. Why couldn't a local guy make this product? So we took it to them, and I took it to China simultaneously, and I got the quotation back, and the Chinese price was like $4.25. We had to beat them up pretty good to get them that low. But the U.S. price was like $32. I mean, there was no chance that they were ever going to get close, and therefore would have priced the product way out of the market, you know, from what this thing needed to be. So going forward, I think there will still be opportunities, but I don't know how they're going to look exactly. Oh, sorry.
I'm just envisioning you, Dave, sitting in a factory explaining what the rack jack is.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a big ego thing in America to have big racks.
Right.
Must make it $4, no more.
Yeah, they don't even know what a gun is.
And then the expanded
right?
product, the fish stretcher. You can put it
See,
in
we're giving
and make
Scott
the
ideas.
fish bigger. It's the digital age. Just make an app that makes the picture make the rack look bigger, because no one's ever going to see the real deer. They're just going to see it on Facebook. So Photoshop. Anyways.
I love it.
Okay. You could add more points too if you with an app. Anyways. Currently, I run a haunted house called the 10th West Scare House. And I don't just run it, I put a mask on, I scare, that's why my voice is kind of raspy, but I love it. So when I was asked to be on this, I thought, I haven't been doing business in China for 6 years. I did buy a big dinosaur from them this last year, but so I'm not the best person to ask what I think will happen in 10 years, but I believe 100% with Blake that, I don't agree with you, Dave, on the whole rack stretchers thing, but but China is becoming, instead of the producer, the consumer. And if I was hungry enough and I was a person sitting in these chairs, I would be going, what could I do to sell a product to China? Because they're tremendous consumers. And like Dave said, it is very hard. Many of the factories can't even produce domestically without lots of permits and things, and so I've thought, what could we do in the U.S.? We have all these empty shipping containers going back over there.
Yep.
Could my brother-in-law, that's a potato farmer in Idaho, fill them with potatoes and send them over, because they don't have big baked potatoes; they have little small ones. But you know, that's the big question: is how can we sell to their market? And what could we sell to them? Because they're more brand loyal than the U.S. right now. They love, it's prestige. They will pay a lot more for a brand that they love than just a no-name brand. So.
I think another thing that anyone dealing with China has to be aware of is that they have traditionally had a big piracy problem, right? They do not have in their history the respect for intellectual property rights. Yep. And so we have a son that's a senior software engineer at Intel, and Intel has been interested in, and they do have a company, big plant in Shanghai, but they've run into the problem, and I think a lot of technical businesses do, where the Chinese want the latest developments in your field. They don't want to, have the second best. They want you to provide to them your latest research, your latest advances, and this can be a real stumbling block because, of course, companies have spent a lot of time developing, in the case of Intel, their chips, and they don't want to just turn over the latest developments to the Chinese. So it's, as you said, there's some stumbling blocks along the way, but it's important to be smart and be aware of where China's coming from on some of these things.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yep.
So the other thing that's happening, so how many years ago was the one-child policy? Was that 1970? 70? So the one-child policy in China is that you can have one child, kind of simplistically saying it. And so what happened is right now, so 1970, 1980 kind of time frame, what's happening in the market is where before there was enormous amounts of labor for manufacturing, that labor is constricting dramatically right now in unbelievable it's unbelievable numbers. So automation, when you talk Foxconn, last time I was in China, I got to go to the world's largest toy factory. It was really neat. But when you have 100,000 employees and your base is restricting and constricting, that becomes more and more difficult. So automation becomes huge. But just something to think about, to kind of lodge up there in your brain.
Great. We'll open it up to question and answers. We have time for maybe just one or two questions.
Hi, my name is Braden Evans. I'm a marketing student with a minor in entrepreneurship. Thanks all for coming. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm really curious on what you guys think of Alibaba and the total disruption. I've recently got into some ventures and I've been using Alibaba. And for those of you that aren't familiar, Alibaba is a sourcing website for Chinese suppliers for people to go on and find suppliers for their products and get products over. So maybe each of you could maybe touch on if you guys have used Alibaba or the methods that you guys find to finding these amazing manufacturers that you rave about. Because when I came here as a freshman, I'm taking these entrepreneurship classes and I'm like, I don't know where to source these products or to find manufacturers. And people are like, oh yeah, just go online and find one. It's like, I don't know, we just don't know. So I'd love to hear you guys' opinions on that. Thanks.
Want me to talk?
That's yours, I think.
Okay, that's me, huh? Yeah, we've used Alibaba for some time, and we've had good success with it, and sometimes you have challenges too. Sometimes there are factories on there, and sometimes there are trading companies too, and we always like to try to go directly to the factory because we want to go in the factory and we want to see it, and when you have a trading company, there's kind of the ability to do that isn't as great. And it's really interesting. I think with Alibaba, what you need to do is make sure that you're also vetting it out in person if you can. You got to go over there. So you meet a factory, you talk to them, if you have the ability to do it, which you should make that sacrifice. Scott talked about, well, he just felt like he should go to Hong Kong. Well, I just feel like you should go see the factory. And what's really interesting is, I don't speak Chinese, but I have Chinese employees, and I've had American employees that speak Chinese too. And we will go over to China and see some of these factories that we might find on Alibaba or elsewhere. And it's interesting, sometimes you think that you are dealing with the factory when you're right there in the factory that's making it, but they've taken away all the pictures from their offices and all the computer, and then now your trading company is sitting in the chairman's desk, and they've faked out Chinese employees. They've faked out, guys of mine that can speak Chinese. They faked me out,
And
So-
the deer antlers on the wall are this wide. It's amazing. It's amazing.
So, Scott just stole the thunder. I don't
Sorry,
have anything
Dave.
left. So I think you got to try to find out as much as you can. And I could tell you a long story about a situation where we had an employee who we thought she was our employee, but she was also acting as a trading company, and she was getting it on both ends, from the factory and whatnot. So you just have to be careful. You got to go over there. You got to try to figure it out. You got to take as many resources with you as you can. And then again, I've also seen guys that have been able to source stuff on Alibaba, and it's worked out, and they've been fine. But if you're going to have a long, sustainable company that you want to grow, I think you need to get over there and work on it.
It's a $1,700 plane ticket, and it's well worth it for all the reasons that they've just said. And you should really go and have 3 or 4 sources, not just one.
Yep.
You need to be able to vet it out. You need to be able to. So Alibaba, when it first started, I just barely I was actually still here at Utah State, and so it's not very old. I mean, talk about a cool story, but they've really started to realize some of the quirks, and they want to make sure that they're not a trading company and how much registered capital and all that stuff. They kind of put that all. So they're getting better, but when it's all said and done, you got to go see their eyeballs, because it goes back to the relationship, and you got to be able to trust them. They got to be able to trust you. And frankly, probably the way it's going to start, if you're just starting out, is you're going to be putting out the money. So you better dang well trust them. You're not going to have terms with them initially, and so you're going to be putting out money, and they're not going to ship until they get your money. So you got to go see their eyeballs.
The whole fact that you're on the ground there gives you an instant credibility than your competition that's trying to do it all via Alibaba. We never used Alibaba, but it's Alibaba for if you're wanting to order 100 of something that you're going to sell here on campus, and you're going to put your own logo on it or whatever. Probably a great resource, probably the only resource, because you can get small quantity production. But trying to set up a business and run it from somebody you found on Alibaba is probably like marrying someone that you swiped on Tinder but you never met yet. and so, there's ways we won't go into how you can tell whether they're a trading company or a legitimate factory by the types of products. If they're selling things, everything from soup to nuts, they're a trading company. If they're specified in plastics or wood or metal, or what, then you can start to say, oh, this is the factory. But I've had the same experience where you go into a factory, and it's not their factory. It's very easy when they know you're coming to say, hey, it's like if you're meeting a girl on Tinder and you go to your friends and go, hey, I'm living in my car, but could I bring her to your apartment? So she thinks that I'm legit and I have a house, and could I say that the clothes in the closet are mine because mine are in my trunk? And anyways.
That's good.
Great, awesome. So we know there's a lot more questions out there. We encourage you to reach out after the Industry Insights panel and get some of those questions answered. We want to go ahead and thank you guys. How do we say thank you in Chinese?
Xie
All right, can you guys mimic that?
谢谢.
Hey, there it is. All right, and then let's give them a Huntsman thank you as well.
Good job.